Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Once again, I want to take the opportunity to welcome everybody who's here and our guests. And if you are a guest with us tonight, if it's your first time here, or perhaps you haven't been on while I've been on before, it would be great if you could put your name in the chat so we know who is new and who is visiting and where you might be visiting from. I would love to say hello to you, and it would help me to have your names in the chat so I know as I'm still getting to know everybody. So that would be great. If it's your first time on Friday night with me, that would be nice. And if you're visiting, you can also put your name on and one of our guests. Love to know. So I'm grateful to be sharing Shabbat with you, as I said before, and I want to talk about two events this week that very much colored my entire week and how I experienced the time. And I'll start of the two events. I'll start with the Jewish one, and it was the holiday of Tisha B'Av, which started on sunset on Wednesday and ran through sunset on Thursday. Tisha B'Av is a fast day that comes every year, and it's the most important fast day after Yom Kippur. It is a day when observant Jews remember the suffering and the woe that befell our people in history, primarily the destruction of both temples in Jerusalem, the first and the second. But traditional Jews will also remember other times of strife, of death, and sorrows for the Jewish people. One might say it's a downer, as Jewish holidays go. But I think it's a downer in kind of a good way, because the way I've experienced it, it's a time that we are encouraged to stop everything else that we are doing and to think about what is sad and difficult in the world. Think about what causes suffering in our hearts and in the hearts of those we love, in the hearts of our communities. Those of us who have been engaging in this type of slowing down as a result of the pandemic, right? Maybe this sounds familiar to those of you who've been slowing down as a result of the pandemic. We know how much of a difference slowing down can make in your view of things. It was because we slowed down and we stopped to look that so many people actually saw the death of George Floyd and didn't look away. It was because we slowed down and we stopped to look that so many people felt the confusion and the outrage, thinking about how a 20-something-year-old EMT named Breonna Taylor could be shot to death by police in her own bedroom of her own home. What if that was your bedroom that the police came barging into? What if that was your partner who was shot in their nightclothes? How does something like that even happen? And we asked ourselves these questions because we paused long enough and listened long enough that we stopped looking away, and we learned to care. And that care, that learning to care, has brought about change, really major change in our society. In the words of the late Congressman and civil rights activist John Lewis, he described this time by saying the following: millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and around the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. I want you to know that that discipline of pausing and taking stock of suffering and injustice in our world, of taking it in and really letting oneself feel the suffering and feel the pain and letting that pain work on us from the inside, and having that inspire us to change and to seek change that so many experienced in this context over the last month or so or two. Exactly that exercise is one of the ways that I work to observe Tisha B'Av each year, as well as the 3 weeks that lead up to the holiday. Observant Jews will also observe a period of mourning and introspection in the 3 weeks up to the holiday. That's called the 3 weeks. And it is a really powerful spiritual practice to take this on, as those of us who have been doing that already from experience from the pandemic will already know. And it's even more intense if one does the whole 3 weeks. It can be a very powerful inner motivator to see things differently and to change and to seek change. There are some who will use this spiritual discipline on Tisha B'Av to face the destruction wrought by climate change, for example, and to get inspired to work to be better stewards of our planet. There are others who will take this time to look at issues like sex trafficking or trafficking of children and to work to end those horrors, to end harms that are done to animals, and others, many other causes out there to be thoughtful about. When we pause and we open our hearts and we allow ourselves to feel the pain and the suffering that's out there, that pain, it opens us up and it inspires us to change and to seek change. It's something we can think about engaging in next year a little more intentionally, perhaps when we have a little more lead time and it's not like my second week on the job. We could think about opening up an opportunity to build an intentional community to study an issue together over the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, and to bring it into that spiritual lens and to see what may grow and what may take root out of that exercise. Something we can think about. We have lots of time till next year. But this year, Tisha B'Av also coincided with the second event that really impacted my week, and that was the funeral of John Lewis. The week-long memorial to this righteous man, a true tzaddik, a true righteous man in our time. It was everywhere. It was on the newspapers and the radio and the TV. And it really felt interwoven with my experience of Tisha B'Av. And by this, I mean that I could see the tragic losses and the injustice that Lewis fought so bravely against all of his long life. And, you know, if you were paying attention on the media this week, and there were just all kinds of stories about, you know, how he would go to protests with his head all bandaged up because he'd been, you know, knocked in the head with beaten and bats and all kinds of things. And he would just keep going. And anyway, just so many stories about his bravery and everything that he lost and everything that he was facing in the way of injustice, everything that he fought so bravely against all of his long life. I could see those losses and that injustice as parallel to and almost interwoven with the tragic losses and the injustice that have befallen Jews over the decades and the centuries and millennia. In this way, I could feel his pain and his people's pain. It was like my people's pain. And in some ways, it became my pain. And it was so much so that on Tisha B'Av morning, I drove into Washington, D.C., and I went to Black Lives Matter Plaza for the first time since I moved into this area. And I stopped there, and upon seeing those iconic yellow letters, I was inspired to say the El Malei Rachamim, the Jewish prayer to honor those loved ones that we Jews have lost. We also say it to honor our heroes and our martyrs. And I said that prayer. And that's what came out of me when I was standing there at Black Lives Matter Plaza. it was a moment, and it was a very powerful moment where everything came together, and I saw the suffering of all of our peoples as one. And I saw the fight for justice as one fight. It was a moment. It was a very powerful moment. Will it be more than a moment for me? Will this be more than a moment for any of us? You know, time will tell, and we'll see. But that moment did get me thinking, what would our society be like? What would our community be like if more of us, more often, could see the suffering of others as if it were our very own family suffering, as if we ourselves were suffering? I want to note that we will have a chance to do some more reflection, some more thinking about these types of conversations on Monday evening in the book group that will be led by Eileen Kugler, reading the book Color Me In, which deals with a lot of issues of identity and discrimination and bias, and integrating one's identity and learning to be proud of all that one is. Also addresses racism and anti-Semitism, and really, really fascinating story. And there is still time to sign up for that book group, and I hope those of you who might be interested in it will still do that if you haven't signed up yet. And I'll close now with the words again of the late John Lewis. She published only, he sent to the New York Times just a couple of days before his death, which in itself is amazing. And it was published by the New York Times on the occasion of his funeral. And he wrote the following: when historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, over aggression, and over war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. May it be so. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. We enter now into our concluding prayers,